Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're discussing about variables. Programming can be brought down to a simple principle. Write down something, make some sort of change to it, and then write down the results. Think of a simple math equation. What is 2 plus 2? Well, first you write down 2, then you say what you want to do to it. In this case, we're going to add 2, and then you save the result, which is 4. But this is a one-time operation and it's not very useful. The power of programming lies in our ability to perform the same operation on many different objects, or change that object itself over and over. In JavaScript, we have several different types of storage containers to hold different kinds of objects or data. The most common one is called variable. Variable is a container we create that holds whatever data we put into it. In JavaScript, a variable is created by simply typing the var keyword and followed by the variable name. That name can be anything, as long as it's written with letters, numbers, underscores, a $sign, and no spaces between the words. Here, it's important to note that JavaScript is case sensitive. So var with a lowercase a and var with a uppercase a are two completely different variables. There's also a catch here. You can't make a variable that starts with a number, but otherwise you can call the variable whatever you want, including a single letter. When you create a variable, you create a container by default, and the container is empty or undefined. We can now assign something to it, such as a value, an object, or something else. Let's do that simple math example again, only this time we'll use a visual representation for our variables. First, I define three variables, which are a, b, and sum. Next, we assign 2 to a and 2 to b. Next, I assign a and b to the value of some variable, quite literally by putting them into the sum variable. In code, it'll look something like this. First, I'm going to declare my variables. So var a, var b, var sum. And now I'm going to assign the values of my variable. So I'm going to say a equals 2, b equals 2, sum equals a plus b. The sum variable is populated by the contents of a and b. So we define it first, then put the variables into it. In code, this can feel a bit backwards, but when you see what's going on in real life, it makes a lot of sense. Creating variables and then calling them in to set their values in a separate statement is a bit too lengthy. So here's a shorter way of writing the same statement. Shorter way of writing the same statement as above. I'm going to say var a equals 2, b equals 2, and sum equals a plus b. Here we created the variable and set its values right away. So we are using less code and it's still making sense. If you're creating a bunch of variables at the same time, you can create them all in one statement by saying var and then listing the variable names separated by commas. Exactly how you do this depends on the script you're writing. In some cases, it makes sense to create variables without setting their values. In others, it makes sense to set a value right away. You'll see me doing both in this course. Now, when creating and using variables, there's one little behavior that I think you should be aware of. If I type out my function in a JavaScript file and run it in the browser, I can ask the value of a or b or sum and get what it is right away. So here, if I type a, enter, and you can see it returns 2. If I say b, it returns 2, and if I say sum, it returns 4, because 2 plus 2 is 4. The browser knows I created variables with these names and knows I'm referring to those variables. But what if I type in c equals 7 in my script? So I'll go back to my script and I'll say c equals 7 and I'll save this. Going back to my browser, if I say c, enter, and it's giving me 7. So in my script, I said c equals 7 without declaring the c variable first. What's happening here is the browser says, okay, I see you're using a variable named c, but I didn't see it defined, so I'm going to assume you're defining it now. It may seem useful right now, but it's actually a problem. Later in the course, we'll learn about scoping and how we can place variables in scope or out of scope of functions. Basically, you can create a variable that only exists within the function of your code, but nowhere else in the code. If you don't create that variable using the var prefix, the new variable gets a global scope, and that can create a whole sorts of weird problems. So a rule of thumb here, anytime you create a variable, declare it using the var prefix to avoid future issues in your code. Next, what can you put in a variable? Well, most things. JavaScript is a weakly typed language, so we don't have to declare what type of contents will go into a variable. We can declare a variable and stuff it with contents or values. A variable is a generic container that holds a number, a string, an object, a boolean value, an array, a function, and the list goes on. That brings us to the end of this video, guys. We'll talk about most of these data types in the upcoming videos. Thank you for watching. Like this video if you liked it. Consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have any questions, leave it out in the comment section and I'll get back to you with the answers. And I'll see you in the next one.